All right, so guiding a spacecraft back to Earth with people on board, it's pretty incredible when you really think about it. The precision, the whole thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing. Every single step has to be perfect. It's all linked together. You mess up one thing and, well.
And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today, that whole return journey. NASA's SpaceX Crew 9 mission. They splashed down just off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida, during the day.
Yeah, a daytime splashdown.
We're going to be going over the whole re-entry and splashdown step by step, trying to make it all really clear and easy to understand. Like, what are the big things that happen to bring these astronauts home?
Yeah, it's not just seeing them splash down. It's like, how do they even get to that point? What has to happen first?
Right, exactly. So who are these brave people? Well, we've got NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Suni Williams, and Butch Wilmore. And, of course, cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov from Roscosmos.
International crew.
Yeah. And get this, when Nick and Aleksandr got to the ISS, Butch and Suni were already up there. They'd been in orbit for a while.
Shows you how there's always someone up on the ISS. Like, it's a constant human presence.
It's pretty amazing. And they all came back in the Dragon Freedom spacecraft. You know, this thing's been up a few times already. It flew Crew 4, Axiom Mission 2, and Axiom Mission 3.
Wow, a real workhorse.
Yeah, and this splashdown for Crew 9, it was actually the third daytime splashdown for this specific capsule.
Huh, so this Dragon kind of likes coming back during the day.
It seems that way. I wonder why that is.
Maybe something to do with when they launch or, I don't know, the weather patterns they end up flying through?
Interesting. So big picture, the return sequence, it starts with them undocking from the ISS, then a bunch of departure burns to get them going in the right direction.
Makes sense. Got to get away from the station safely.
Exactly. Then the crew gets a bit of rest before they have to prep for re-entry.
So like putting on spacesuits and checking for any leaks, right?
Yep, important stuff. And those spacesuits are not just your regular clothes.
Oh yeah, they're like mini spaceships, really. Keeping the astronauts safe if the cabin pressure suddenly drops.
Then they get rid of the truck.
The trunk?
Yeah, it's this unpressurized part below the crew capsule. It's on the bottom part of the Dragon where the heat shield is.
Oh, right. So they jettison it to expose the heat shield for when they come screaming back into the atmosphere.
Exactly. You don't want anything blocking that heat shield when things start heating up. Less weight means less heat to deal with too, right?
Yeah, for sure. Smart move.
Okay, so then comes the deorbit burn. This is where they use those forward thrusters, the Draco thrusters on the front of the spacecraft.
Okay, and this is what actually slows them down enough to re-enter, right?
Precisely. This burn lasted about 7.5 minutes and happened when Dragon was at the highest point of its orbit.
Wow, 7.5 minutes seems like a long time.
It is. It has to be just right to slow them down enough to hit the atmosphere at the correct angle and come down off the coast of Florida. The targeted splashdown time was 2:50 p.m. Pacific, which is 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. Pretty amazing how they can figure that out so precisely.
It really is. Like, what things could throw off that 7.5 minute burn, and how do they adjust for that?
Well, think about it. You've got things like atmospheric drag, how well those Draco thrusters are actually performing, even tiny differences in how the spacecraft is positioned.
Huh. Yeah, I never would have thought of those things.
It's a lot to take into account, but they've got teams on the ground tracking everything, and the spacecraft has some really advanced navigation systems on board.
So it can make adjustments on the fly if it needs to.
Exactly. Now, before the deorbit burn, Dragon was already doing things to get ready for re-entry.
Getting a head start.
Yeah, like isolating the thermal system fluid control loops from the radiator.
What's that?
So basically, they're making sure the inside of the Dragon stays at a good temperature for the crew during re-entry. You know, things are going to get hot out there.
Oh, right. Makes sense. You don't want the astronauts baking inside.
Exactly. And they also start disconnecting the trunk. Remember, it's got to go. They use this thing called a claw mechanism to separate the data, power, and fluid lines between the spacecraft and the trunk.
So it's like unplugging all the cables before you detach something.
Yep, pretty much. Now, here's something interesting. While all this is happening, Dragon is basically flying itself.
What, like on autopilot?
Pretty much. It's all controlled by this fancy flight control software.
So the crew just sits back and enjoys the ride?
Not exactly. They're watching everything very closely on their touch screens and tablets. Things like how long the burns are, if the Draco thrusters are firing correctly, the angle they're coming into the atmosphere at, you know, that kind of stuff.
So they're like supervisors, making sure everything goes to plan.
Right. They're ready to take over manually if something goes wrong.
Makes sense. You always need a human in the loop, just in case.
Absolutely. And we heard during the broadcast that it was Commander Nick Hague who was talking to Mission Control back at Hawthorne, California, keeping them updated and getting instructions.
Communication is key, especially during something this important.
Couldn't agree more. And, you know, those spacesuits aren't just for show. If something happened and the Dragon lost pressure, those suits would kick in and keep the astronauts safe, like their own personal little spaceships.
That's pretty incredible technology, isn't it? They've thought of everything.
So back to that deorbit burn. That was the last time those Draco thrusters were used for the whole mission. Once that 7.5 minute burn was done, Dragon was on a direct path to that splashdown zone off the coast of Florida. I mean, it's incredible how they can hit such a small target in the ocean.
You know what's crazy? They have to coordinate with the Coast Guard, too.
Oh yeah, that's right. NASA and SpaceX work with the Coast Guard to clear out a safety zone around the splashdown area.
So no boats get in the way.
Exactly. Safety first. So after the deorbit burn, it's time to button things up for re-entry. They close the nose cone.
To protect the hatch and, the whole capsule.
Right. And they also turn on the suit purge system, which basically keeps the astronauts cool because re-entry gets super hot. I mean, we're talking thousands of degrees.
It's all that friction with the atmosphere, right?
Yep, friction and compression. They actually have this special heat shield that can withstand temperatures over 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Pretty amazing technology.
Yeah, keeps the crew from getting fried.
Absolutely. Now, here's the thing about re-entry. When they're coming back in, all this superheated gas, plasma they call it, builds up around the capsule.
Plasma.
Yeah, like really hot gas where the atoms have lost some of their electrons. And this plasma, while it helps dissipate the heat, it also blocks radio waves. So they lose communication for a while.
Ah, so that's why there's a communication blackout. Makes sense.
They call it loss of signal, or LOS. It lasts for about 7 minutes. Then they get the signal back, AOS, acquisition of signal.
So during those 7 minutes, what are the astronauts doing?
Well, while they're waiting for the signal to come back, they're getting ready for landing, putting away their tablet and closing their visors, getting into that landing position.
Smart. Better safe than sorry.
Then comes the big moment, the parachutes. Wagon deploys them automatically based on altitude and how fast it's going. First, the drogue parachutes come out at about 18,000 feet. They're traveling at something like 350 miles per hour at that point.
Wow, still pretty fast.
Yeah, so those drogue chutes slow them down and stabilize the capsule.
Makes sense. Got to get things under control before the main parachutes.
Exactly. Then at about 6,500 feet, when they're down to around 116 miles per hour, the 4 main parachutes open.
And that's what gives them that nice, gentle descent.
Yep, and they splash down right on schedule, 2:57 p.m. Pacific time off the coast of Tallahassee. Seeing those parachutes open is always such a relief.
It's a beautiful sight, and a sign that the hardest part is over.
Definitely. As soon as Dragon hit the water, the recovery teams from SpaceX were ready to go.
They don't waste any time.
Nope. They've got the recovery vessel, the Megan, and a bunch of smaller, faster boats.
So what's the first thing they do?
Safety checks. They have to make sure there's no leftover fuel from the Draco thrusters floating around. That stuff can be toxic.
Oh, right. Safety first, always.
Absolutely. They confirm that the capsule was upright in what they call stable 1 configuration.
The ideal position for recovery.
Exactly. Then they start rigging the spacecraft to lift it onto the Megan. One of the SpaceX team actually goes on board the Dragon to attach these big hoist rings.
Wow, talk about a specialized job.
I know, right? And they got the capsule on board the Megan just 30 minutes after splashdown. Talk about efficiency.
Incredible. A well-oiled machine.
Once it's on board, they wash down the Dragon with fresh water.
To get the salt off.
Exactly. Salt water can really damage those sensitive components.
Smart. I wouldn't want to be the one cleaning up after that.
Haha, no kidding. And then comes the exciting part, opening the hatch and getting the crew out.
Crew egress.
Yep. It's actually the first time they opened the side hatch.
Oh, yeah. At the ISS, they use the docking hatch on the front.
Right. So the SpaceX medical team is there waiting to greet them. And they actually take out the footrests inside the capsule to give everyone more space to get out.
After months in space, those first steps back on Earth must be a little tricky.
All right, it takes time for their bodies to adjust to gravity again. So they also had this slide set up to help the crew get out safely.
Very thoughtful.
And then one by one, the crew comes out. First, Aleksandr Gorbunov, then Suni Williams, then Butch Wilmore, and lastly, Commander Nick Hague.
Home safe and sound.
Yep. And right away, they're taken to the medical bay on board the Megan for checkups.
Got to make sure everyone's healthy after being up in space for so long.
Absolutely. After that, they'll get on a helicopter, fly to the airport, and then take a NASA plane back to Houston. Back to Johnson Space Center.
Back home.
It's a long journey, but they made it. And while they were up on the ISS, they were busy. Lots of science experiments.
Oh, yeah. Like what kind of stuff?
Well, they did a lot of work on Parkinson's disease, osteoporosis, even cancer research.
Really important stuff.
Yeah, the ISS is like this giant orbiting laboratory. They can do experiments up there that we just can't do down here on Earth.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It really is. And all this work is important for future missions, too. Like going back to the moon, maybe even Mars someday.
I can't even imagine what that would be like.
Me neither. They were even testing out new exercise equipment designed specifically for space. It's important for astronauts to exercise regularly to keep their bones and muscles strong.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Microgravity does a number on the body.
It does. They also did some really cool experiments with a wooden satellite.
A wooden satellite?
Yeah, they wanted to see how wood would hold up in space.
Huh, interesting. Never thought about that.
It was the first one ever. They're looking at using more sustainable materials for space travel.
Smart thinking.
They also studied how microbes survive outside the space station.
Wow, they really covered a lot of ground, didn't they?
They did. And Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore, they were up there for about 9 months. They even did some spacewalks to help maintain the ISS.
Spacewalks are so dangerous.
They are, and they're really important for keeping the ISS running smoothly. They did a great job. And before Crew 9 came home, they did a handover with the Crew 10 astronauts who just arrived.
So there's always a crew up there keeping things going.
Yep, a continuous presence. That handover process is really important for making sure all the research continues without interruption.
Smooth transition.
And here's a little piece of trivia for you. This splashdown, it was the last one on the East Coast for Dragon. From now on, they'll be landing on the West Coast.
Huh. Wonder why they're making the switch.
Probably just logistics. Maybe it makes more sense to recover them on the West Coast now.
Yeah, could be a lot of reasons.
So there you have it, the full story of Crew 9's return journey. From undocking to splashdown, it's an amazing feat of engineering, teamwork, and human courage.
It really is. We saw how everything has to work perfectly together, from the spacecraft systems to the people on the ground and, of course, the astronauts themselves.
It shows just how far we've come in space exploration.
It's amazing how it's almost routine now, sending people to space and bringing them back.
And it all comes down to this partnership between NASA and SpaceX. They've got this incredible blend of technology and human skill that makes it all possible.
The technology is amazing, but it's still people who make the decisions, who solve the problems when things don't go as planned.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, we hope this deep dive has given you a good understanding of this incredible event. It's complicated stuff, but we tried to make it as clear as possible.
Hopefully you've gotten a better sense of what it takes to get those astronauts home safely. All the planning, the precision, and the sheer dedication of everyone involved.
It's really inspiring. So here's something to think about. We've made so much progress in space travel. But what's next? What new technologies are going to change the game even more? What new places will we be able to explore? It's an exciting time to be following space exploration, that's for sure. And if you're interested in learning more, we encourage you to check out all the great resources about crewed spaceflight and the research happening on the International Space Station. There's so much more to discover.